Is Megalopolis a misunderstood masterpiece that the critics just didn't appreciate? Or is it another in a long line of overambitious films that swing for the fences but don't quite hit the mark? I went into this film not sure what to expect. On the one hand, you have a self-funded $120 million passion project from legendary director Francis Ford Coppola, which has been over 40 years in the making. An ambitious original film, not based on an existing IP, something which is desperately lacking in the current cinematic landscape. On the other, you have numerous controversies from Coppola's reported behaviour on set and the marketing company releasing a trailer suggesting that all of Coppola's films are simply misunderstood at their time of release, only to find that the quotes that were attributed to critics were fake and potentially AI generated, which resulted in an apology from Lionsgate and the trailer getting taken down after only 9 hours. So, putting all that aside, how is the film? Caesar Catalina, played by Adam Driver, is trying to bring about a new future, one filled with hope and optimism. He believes he can bring this about with the creation of a new utopian city called Megalopolis. Having already invented a miracle material, megalon, he plans to build Metropolis from it, leaving the world of concrete and steel and his own troubled past behind. Will he succeed? Or will the establishment and those that are afraid of change, clinging to the past, prevent him from bringing about the future he believes the people so desperately need? The opening scene sets up an intriguing scenario, one in which Caesar manages to stop time before falling off the top of the Chrysler building. There's a reason this scene has been heavily used in the marketing, as the film never improves beyond this point. Like so many things in this film, his ability to stop time seems to be more of a metaphor and less of an explainable phenomenon within the world of the film. Despite the grandiose ambition, this metaphor, along with many of the themes of the film, only runs skin deep, merely hinting at bigger ideas, never to be fully explored in a meaningful way. It's as if the themes were established ahead of time, with a narrative then concocted around them. Characters don't feel fully realised, and are more so mechanisms in which to deliver the themes, motivations. Much like the viewing experience, everyone in the film suffers from a lack of direction and seems confused about what they're doing. Not a single character here is likeable, too aloof and pretentious to be relatable, as if they are all too aware of their own self-importance. Adam Driver's Caesar is a troubled soul. His performance for most of the film is stilted, emotionless and subdued, though he makes some interesting choices in a manic and self-destructive, bizarre drug-infused sequence. He has numerous speeches throughout the film, the intention of which is probably to inspire the city of New Rome and by extension the audience, but the dialogue and goofy visuals hamstring any attempt to emotionally resonate with what he's saying. His character ultimately lacks depth, and we never get to know it beyond a surface level, despite him having the most screen time. Even his wife's mysterious death offers nothing but a plot point. Giancarlo Esposito as New Rome's Mayor Cicero provides the main foil for Caesar's grand vision of the future, insisting to hold on to a past of steel and concrete even as it crumbles around him. Unfortunately, his motivations and reasons for not liking Caesar are plainly stated about 20 minutes into the film, as he whispers into his ear something along the lines of, "I was the prosecutor for your wife's murder and I don't like change," robbing the audience of any mystery about their potential shared history. Distractingly, any time he's out in public, there is very loud, obviously ADR'd booing, as if the film is audibly smacking you on the head, saying, "He's bad." A single scene discussing his daughter with Caesar hints at what could have been some riveting conflict between these diametrically opposed characters, but otherwise he sleepwalks through this performance as he has done with many others where he's simply cast as generic bad guy, offering none of his unique gravitas or presence to the role. Nathalie Emmanuel plays Julia Cicero, the daughter of the mayor who falls in love with Caesar. She comes across as bland with a character arc that is all too predictable. As is the case with everyone in this film, she is clearly lacking solid direction, as some of her lines are almost comically bad. There are some, in fact, that almost reach the heights of the now infamous and highly memeable line from Mark Wahlberg in The Happening.
What? No!
Perhaps, fortunately for her, I doubt anyone will remember or be talking about this film 10 years or even 1 month from now. Aubrey Plaza is clearly having fun playing a femme fatale called, wait for it, Wow Platinum. No, really, that's her name. She does inject energy and levity to her role, something that is desperately lacking in the rest of the film, which is otherwise a fairly mundane experience, and as such is probably the most well-realised character in the film. She goes from lover to foil, letting her jealousy and unrequited love rule her emotions and fuel her ambitions and motivations. Shia LaBeouf is in this film as Claudio, the nephew of a prominent banker in Rome, who's played by John Voight. Essentially, he plays a spoilt, pretentious Nepo baby who is particularly jealous of his cousin Caesar's achievements. He indulges himself in depravity and debauchery, and later goes into politics, using the power of the people to win himself the respect he desperately desires from his uncle, until that power is turned back on him. This aspect of the character only comes about in the latter half of the film though, and is severely underdeveloped, instead acting as a not-so-subtle commentary on modern politics, with an onlooker at one of his rallies commenting, "He's a little crazy, has no boundaries, and he's an entertainer. That's what makes him a good politician." Yeah, enough said. The music is often distracting. It tells you how to feel but doesn't actually make you feel it, much like the dialogue. At times it feels like a temp score with obvious emotive strings that do nothing but leave you cold. Perhaps the film's biggest sin, however, is the visuals. A merging of ancient Rome and 20th century New York was never going to be easy. They are two styles and cultures so disparate, how could they possibly bring them together in a coherent way? Well, they don't. Instead, what you get is business suits with togas on tops, QR codes on placards during a particularly bizarre bidding scene, and Greek dresses. Perhaps the most successful merging of these worlds is the stadium/Colosseum. These two things actually complement each other quite well, and certain wide interior shots don't look all bad. However, things quickly devolve into awful green screen replacement as other performers take to the stage. Speaking of green screen, there's a lot of it, and none of it looks good. Unfortunately, as experienced a director as Coppola is, his apparent lack of it when it comes to visual effects really does shine through here. There's a scene which you briefly see in the trailer overlooking the city, where the characters are standing on a clock amongst some steel beams that look like they were rendered back in the 90s. They would have been far better off using technology like the volume, as was the case in The Batman, whose rooftop scenes looked incredible. Apparently, that was something they were doing initially before Coppola went off the idea. During Caesar's climactic speech, where he opens up Megalopolis to the citizens, the wide shots of the crowd look like something from a poorly rendered video game cutscene, or possibly a Neil Breen film with a bit more budget. For a film that focuses so heavily on visions of the future, it's a shame that these are easily the worst visual elements of the film. All of this is to say nothing disparaging towards the visual effects team, who I'm sure were up against it. In fact, the original one was fired just 6 weeks into production, along with the art department leaving shortly after. Reportedly, after a crew member said they needed more time to work out how the film was going to look, Coppola said, "How can you figure out what Megalopolis looks like when I don't even know what Megalopolis looks like?" So it's no wonder really at all that the visuals turned out the way that they did. That behind the scenes chaos is all too visible on screen, which is only to be expected, I suppose, when there's a "we'll fix it in post" mentality, as many films before have employed. This film desperately wants you to leave with a sense of hope and optimism for the future, to build and leave the world in a better place for the next generations. And whilst that's a nice notion, unfortunately, as the closing shot faded, all I heard was stifled laughter from the handful of other people in the theatre with me. My prevailing thought at that time was, what the hell did I just watch?
What the fuck is this?
It's not so bad it's good, or even bad in a fun way. It's an overly ambitious, cautionary fable on where having a single auteur filmmaker can really go wrong. Megalopolis does not present itself as a film made by a master filmmaker with decades of experience, but more so a $100 million student film. Calling it a fable, in fact, is doing a lot of the heavy lifting for all the unexplainable but probably meant to be a metaphor nonsense that occurs throughout. Mercifully, for Francis Ford Coppola at least, this film will not become part of his legacy, merely a footnote in it, as much as he might have wanted this to be something to stand the test of time. So, have you seen Megalopolis? I'm going to guess based on the box office, probably not. Are there any films you're looking forward to before the end of the year? Let me know in the comments. My next review will be Joker 2, which is a musical. That's possibly genius or complete and total madness. If you don't want to miss that, consider subscribing. Thanks for watching.